Best books of the year. Oh my goodness, I have agonized over this list. You have no idea. I had so many to choose from, and my top 5 will surprise you. So as always, grab a snack, grab a beverage, and let's get into it. Hello, hello, hello. My name is Nakia. Welcome to my channel. It's that time of year. You already know because I've already done the worst books of 2022, but we are here for the creme de la creme. Best books of 2022, and this list was so difficult for me to make, more difficult than last year because I had so many good books this year and I just had to comb through and do all kinds of things to figure out what my top 5 would be. So I have a very interesting mix of middle grade, some sci-fi, some thriller mysteries, all the things I love. So let's just get on into this countdown, shall we? Now for this list, I probably had like 7 books that I was trying to decide between, and I wanted to narrow it down to 5. So what I did was went back, reread some of them, re-listened to some of the audiobooks, and what helped me decide the order for this list was basically which one would I want to reread like right now. Didn't even want to put the sample down as I was rereading it for this video. Which ones were most memorable? Like when I picked it up and started reading it, like, oh, I remember this, I remember this, I remember this, because that counts. And finally, what books just bring me joy? Like when I started reading them, what made me smile, what made me have fond memories, all of those things factored in. So for number 1, it ticks all of these boxes and you have to wait to see what it is. But let's start with number 5, which I think I would have thought before today that this book was going to be number 1. I thought a lot of these books would be number 1. But once again, when I started looking at the things, most memorable, rereadability, brings me joy, I could reread 1,000 times, that's what decided. But anyway, coming at number 5, we have The Maid by Nita Prose. Are you surprised? I am. I voted for this in the Goodreads Choice Awards. I was so happy that it won. It is my favorite mystery thriller that I have read this year. But it comes in at number 5 for me because when I was rereading it, it was taking a little bit for me to get back into it, get back into the swing of things, but I still wanted to reread it. It just was not like, oh, I can't put this down. It is very memorable. I do remember a lot of things from the book, and that is why it is up here, number 5. And as far as brings me joy, Molly, the main character, brings me joy. That's the main reason this is on this list. I love me some Molly. But in case you don't know, this book is about a woman, Molly. She's a maid at this opulent hotel called the Regency Grand, and she is very meticulous with her job. She wants things to be just right. She's also socially awkward, but she is very direct with people. She does not mince her words, which is one of the things I loved about her. So while she was on the job one day, she is tending to the room of this wealthy couple, Mr. and Mrs. Black, and she discovers Mr. Black dead on the bed. Now, because Molly's the one who discovered him and she's a little eccentric, the police start to zero in on her as a suspect. And of course, this is a mystery, so it's all about who done it. And there's a cast of characters, some likable, some not, but you are following Molly. And as I said, I love being in her shoes, in her head. I just loved it. There was also heart to this story because Molly had a grandmother who raised her. Her mother died when she was young and she was super close to her grandmother. She's always recalling things that her grandmother taught her. And there is a point in the novel where we find out how her grandmother passed, and that brought me to tears. So if you can make me emotional, you can make me laugh, you can do all those things, you are definitely in the top for my best books of the year. Like I said, the only reason this one is not further up on the list is because, like I said, I wasn't itching to reread it. Like I said, when I started rereading stuff for this video, I was like skimming ahead, like, okay, can we get to the mystery part? And then when I started to get to that, I was like, oh, okay, I'm kind of into this now. But just remembering things and knowing the twists and everything, it didn't make me really want to just jump back into rereading it. So that's the only reason why I said number 5. But like I said, I love The Maid. People call it a cozy mystery. You could call it that because it's not like a thriller. There's not a lot of action. It is comfy, cozy. I love the hotel setting. So anyway, love Nita Prose writing. Can't wait to see what she does next. So let's move on to number 4. All right. Coming in at number 4, another one that will probably surprise you because it surprised me that it snuck up on this list, but I should have known when I bought a secondhand copy from my library. I saw it. It was only like $3. I snatched it up, and that let me know right there that I clearly really enjoyed this book. And I'm speaking of Mickey 7 by Edward Ashton. Can you believe it? I always have sci-fi books on my list every year. I also voted for this for the Goodreads Choice Award. So, I mean, it didn't win, but that's okay. I still enjoyed this book. Now, the reason it is higher than The Maid is because this is just one I could re-listen to, reread over and over and over again. I did this one mostly as an audiobook, and I love the audiobook. I started listening to the audiobook to prepare for this video to see if I wanted it on the list, and I was just getting all into it again. And I love the character of Mickey 7, but let me tell you what it's about in case you don't know. In this book, we are following a man named Mickey 7 who is a clone. He is the 7th iteration of Mickey Barnes. He is on a ship that is on a damn near uninhabitable planet. And basically his job is to do all the dangerous things, and if he dies, they just bring him back again and again. They just keep cloning him because it takes more to take care of robots, AI, that kind of thing. You know, there's parts and all that, but a human, you know, he's expendable. You just recreate another one. So basically we start this book with Mickey 7 on a mission. He gets in trouble. He falls into a hole. His team thinks he's pretty much dead. So they're like, well, we might as well not even try to save you. We'll just bring back your next one. But what they don't know is that he does survive. And when he gets back to the ship, they have already cloned him and created Mickey 8. Neither one of them want to sacrifice himself, Mickey 7 or Mickey 8. So they decide to try to coexist, taking turns living the life of Mickey 7. But of course, there's always this whole thing of if they get found out, they both will be destroyed and there will be no Mickey 9. That will be the end. And that is just the beginning of this book. There is also chapters where we get backstory from Mickey 7 about how he ended up volunteering to be an expendable. There are themes of, you know, what makes us human, what makes us have a soul, a spirit, because there are people who call him immortal and there are people who think he's just like this soulless thing because he keeps being recreated and he doesn't even know what he is. He's questioning himself all the time, and that's also fascinating to me. And there is a character named Marshall who I just love. You would have to hear the audiobook narrator do his voice, but he just is not a fan of Mickey 7. He's dealing with him because he has to, but he is just like, everything Mickey 7 does just irritates him, and he cracked me up. I loved his character. There is a relationship in this book, and it's odd, but I mean, we're dealing with people who are just odd in general. Like I said, everybody in this book is a little weird. So it didn't really rub me the wrong way. There is something that happens with this relationship towards the end of the book that was strange, but I mean, all I could do was be like, okay. But like I said, I enjoyed this book so much. I originally gave it 4 stars. I feel like I'm going to revisit it, the audiobook again, and see if I still feel that way. Only because there was some parts in the middle that kind of dragged a little bit when they were going into like more science and backstory of like what happened with the planets and that kind of stuff. But I still enjoyed the audiobook. So like I said, this is number 4 on this list because I would re-listen to this in a heartbeat. I think back about Mickey 7 and I loved him, and I can't wait to read book 2 in 2023. And I mean, so much of this book is memorable. Even the things that I said, I was kind of like, okay, I can't forget them. It's memorable. So it's higher than Molly because, again, I would reread this in a heartbeat, re-listen to this in a heartbeat. Molly would be like, I'd have to be in the mood for that kind of cozy book. But yeah, I love this. One of the quotes on here says, Andy Weir, watch out. I agree. If you enjoy Andy Weir, I think you will enjoy this. If you don't like comedy in your sci-fi, this wouldn't be for you. But I loved it. The humor was for me. Just, yeah, as I said. Number 4 on the list. All right. Coming in at number 3. And this one surprised me because of where it is on the list. I knew it was going to be in my top 5, but I thought it was going to be higher. But again, something snuck up on me last month in November. And I mean, it made its way to my top 2. But for number 3, this book is usually sitting here behind me. If you watch all my videos, you already know I have a physical copy secondhand. I don't own that many books, but I had to have this one. And I'm speaking of Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Alston. Now, if you don't know, this is a middle grade fantasy, and I fell in love with this book. Now, the reason it is number 3 and not number 2 or number 1 is because it's not the most memorable. Like when I started flipping through pages, I was like, oh, now I remember, but there's just so much that happens. It's, you know, a lot going on in this book. So I could not remember everything, but it wins out for rereadability. I started rereading this to get ready for this video, and I just wanted to keep going and being in this magical world that B.B. Alston has created. And I mean, it brings me so much joy. This world that he created, it just makes me smile. As soon as I got to chapters where she started finding out about this supernatural world, I was just smiling and just couldn't wait to read more. But I had to stop so I could get ready for this video. But in case you don't know, we are following Amari, and we pick up where Amari is having a little bit of difficulty in school. She's going to this private school that her mom has gotten her into, but she comes from a neighborhood that's not the best. And you know, her mother is working a lot of hours to try to get her into school so she could be raised right and have better opportunities. And kids at school are not the nicest to her because they feel like she doesn't belong there, and they tease her about her brother because everybody believes he's dead, but he's missing. And Amari does not believe he's dead. She thinks, you know, something clearly has happened to her brother. They were super close. He's older than her. One day, Amari's world is turned upside down. She starts finding out about things and clues that could lead her to what happened to her brother. One day, she discovers in her brother's room a ticking briefcase, and inside is an invitation for tryouts for the Bureau of Supernatural Affairs. Now, she is like, what is going on? What was my brother into? But she is going to accept because this is her way to try to figure out what happened to her brother. And once she gets there, she's also an outsider because she's competing against kids who have known about magic their whole lives, and they look at her like, who's this new kid? What are you doing here? So she has to deal with all of that kind of stuff. There's also this evil magician who is threatening the world. And in the meantime, she's trying to figure out and piece together what happened to her brother. It is just so much going on. All the things that we come across in this book, the creatures, the magic. I just loved every minute of it. So again, I have talked about this book enough. Like I said, the only reason it's number 3 is because I just don't fully remember every detail about the story. I think I may even have to reread it before I go to book 2, which I plan to read in January, February of this year. But that's the only reason it's number 3, because everything didn't stick in my mind from this book, but I just remember the experience, the joy, the magic, the whimsy. And it also, you know, deals with the upper class versus the lower class and all kinds of things, being an outsider, just so much. Like I said, I just love Amari and I love this book. So number 3, let's move on. All right, we're in the top 2 favorite books of 2022. As I said, I don't think you know what the top 2 are. I am surprised. Not necessarily surprised by number 1, but this next one, I am shocked. So if you asked me this time last year, or I'd say March, April, May, if a historical fiction thriller would make it into my top 5 books of the year, I would have said, I don't know, what's it about? But that is what happened. And I am speaking of The Nurse's Secret by Amanda Skinnendorf. Now, like I said, this book snuck up on me. I don't even remember how I found it. I think I saw the cover on my library site and I was like, what is this? I'm intrigued. Read the synopsis, picked it up, and it was the best book I read in November, and it is here in my number 2 spot for the year. And the reason why: rereadability, memorable, and brings me joy. Like I said, now I just read this book in November, so it is still fresh, but I did revisit it before I decided to film this video, and I still was into it, still wanted to keep rereading it. I remember after I read it, I wanted to reread it again right after. That hardly has ever happened to me. Even now that I'm reading some books in December, I was like, I could just reread The Nurse's Secret because I own it. I bought it for my Kindle. But let me tell you what it's about. In The Nurse's Secret, we are in the late 1800s and we are following a woman named Una who is a pickpocket and a thief. Now, if you don't know, I love a story where we are following a criminal because I love just seeing how they operate, things they do. It's just fascinating to me. Not a murderer, it's a criminal. Like I said, a thief, that kind of thing. So yeah, we pick up immediately with her on a train, has a mark. She steals something from this guy. And then we go along with her to where she now wants to try to have a better life for herself. She's still gonna do her thievery, but she wants to move on to bigger and better places, bigger jobs, bigger school. So she has a pair of ruby cufflinks that she has picked up and she wants to go get top dollar for them. She lives with this woman who's like the mom of the house and she watches over all these other women that are thieves and whatnot. She doesn't want to deal with her because she wants to get, like I said, the most money. So she goes to meet with this man who goes by Traveling Mike and she tells him about these ruby cufflinks and, you know, she's like, you want to make a deal. Now he knows about the woman of her house. He's like, look, I can't be caught dealing with you. So she's like, we could do this in secret. So they decide to meet up in the alley, make the exchange. When she goes to do this exchange with him, he's dead. So then through some things, the police show up. Of course, they find her there and they think she did it. So then some things happen. She ends up going on the run and she's in hiding and she has to figure out what she could do to try to clear her name and where she can lay low until this can happen. So she sees an ad in a newspaper for a nursing school program. Now this is historical fiction because this book actually is going to talk about the first nursing school in our country, in the United States, Bellevue. So she sees this ad and she's like, this is the perfect opportunity. Of course, she finds a way to get into this school. When she gets there, it's all about her secret not getting out. How long can she stay in this program? There's people there who don't like her because they can see she's different, but she's trying to play a role like she belongs there. And I mean, that's a similar theme to Marty and the Night Brothers, where you're an outsider, people don't like you, but you got to prove your worth. And there is actually a little bit of romance in this book, but I did not mind because it's so old school, so old fashioned. You know, there's courtship, nothing much happens besides a kiss. And it's just so, I loved it. But then there is a serial killer because while she's at the hospital, a patient dies, and the way the body is found reminds her of the way Traveling Mike was found. So she starts to believe there is a serial killer on the loose, and now she's trying to find that serial killer because they are the ones responsible, not her. They can clear her name. So yes, there's a mystery. It was also fascinating learning about old school medicine things they did back then because the author is actually a nurse and she brings her medical expertise to this book. And it is just so fascinating. You can tell how much I enjoyed it by the way I'm talking about it. It just excites me. As I said, this book caught me off guard. There were twists and turns that I did not see coming. This is not fast paced, but it is a little bit, it does get gritty. Like I said, I just loved every minute of it. I think there may have been like a little bit where there was some more medical stuff that we were with her at a nursing school. So it was a little bit of like dealing with her in class and stuff like that. But I just loved Amanda Skinador's writing. So I was still immersed in it. I love this book. As I said, the only reason why it is not number one, and when I read it, I was like, I feel like this was my best book of the year. But the number one spot was already claimed a while ago. And it's a series that I cannot stop. And you already know if you've been following my channel. But like I said, this one is number two because I could reread it right now. Thinking about it, you see, it brings me joy. And I remember so many things from this book now. We'll see how I feel months from now if I still remember so much. But right now, it's still fresh. Things just stick in my mind that stand out about this book. And yeah, I can't say enough about it. So now I'm on the lookout for more historical fiction thrillers that are similar to this. I've added some to my Goodreads, but I'm just still looking. If you have any recommendations, let me know below. But let's move on to the number one spot. What could it be? I don't know. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. All right. At the number one spot, drum roll, please. Helldivers, Book 1 by Nicholas Sansbury Smith. You should have known I have ranted and raved about this book. I have tried to get everybody to read it. It is a horror sci-fi, and I cannot believe this is my number one book because it was chosen for me by my daughter, who would have known. I am so thankful for her. She doesn't even know how she found it. I have constantly asked her so I could go try to find more books like this, but she doesn't even remember how she found it. I'm just glad she did. I suggest you check out that video where she chose my TBR because it was just interesting, the book she chose and how I ended up with this one. And I also did a try chapter video for the books that she chose. So I have my first reactions to this book, but this Helldiver series has just taken over my life. But let me tell you what it's about. So as I said, this is a horror sci-fi book. And in this world, we are 2 centuries post World War III, where everything is just ravaged. It's just a mess. So the last of humanity are up in the air in these airships, and we are with the passengers of the Hive, and we are mainly following Xavier Rodriguez, who is a helldiver. Helldivers are the people who dive down to the surface to look for parts and things for the ships, because these airships, you know, they've been running for a long time, but they don't last forever, and they have to go down to the surface to look for parts. But the surface is dangerous. There are mutant creatures and things that have come from radiation. And there's these creatures called the Sirens, and they are terrifying. So in this book, like I said, we pick up with Xavier Rodriguez on a dive. He loses an important team member, and it creates some things that happen, some changes in his life. I can't say because I don't want to spoil anything. But then we are also on the Hive, the airship, and we are dealing with Captain Ash, as she is trying to keep order on her ship. But we have the lower deckers and the upper deckers. The lower deckers are people who really just in their world have no value. You're just here because you are alive. But the upper deckers are people who contribute, you know, they're engineers and things like that, scientists and farmers and those kind of things. And so there's all this tension and turmoil between the two because the lower deckers get treated like crap. There's some consequences to that. And they get a distress signal from another ship called Ares. They are the only other ship that is out there. They are stuck in Hades, which is a hostile zone, and they need help. Now, of course, like I said, they have some of the last of humanity that is left as well. So we need some hell divers to go down there and help him out. And Xavier Rodriguez is going to lead because he is one of the few hell divers who has survived well past the number of missions they're supposed to have. They're supposed to have like 9 max and he's at like 80 something. So he is just like a legend. I loved Xavier Rodriguez, following him, but you already should know what does it for me with this book is the audiobook. I feel like you either have to do this in tandem or you could just do the audiobook by itself. I did the first book in tandem, but then since then I have just been continuing the series as just an audiobook. I love the audiobook narration by R.C. Bray. This is why this is number 1. As soon as I started listening to this audiobook again to see where I wanted to place this on the list, I just immediately smiled when I heard R.C. Bray's voice. I just love his audiobook narration style. He is the perfect person to bring Xavier Rodriguez to life. And even I picked up the book, I downloaded a sample on my Kindle and I was reading along and I still was just so captivated and just wanted to keep going and keep going. So this ticks every box. Rereadability, memorable, and brings me joy. I just can't believe this was my number 1. I do, because I'm still going with the series. I'm all the way up to, I think, book 4. And I said I wasn't going to read book 4, but I couldn't help it. I'm invested. I love this series. I don't know what else to say. If you are into horror sci-fi, I highly suggest this book. If you are curious, this just, like I said, the sirens were creepy. So I have a special guest, if you can see her, my cat Daisy. Hopefully she'll behave herself so I can finish this up. But anyway, I don't even know the last thing I was saying. I just love this series, love it. So like I said, this is my kind of horror sci-fi. I hope to discover something else in 2023, but we shall see. So far, nothing has topped this book. So there you have it, my beautiful people. All right, so just like with my worst books of 2022, I am rather happy with the way I sorted this list for best books of 2022. I wasn't sure how I was going to do it. If I had just gone off my memory, this would have been a totally different list, but I think I will continue doing this going forward, where I will reread samples and think about, like, you know, how much joy it brings me, if I want to keep rereading it, that kind of thing, because that is what will stand the test of time for me with these books. I can't call a book a favorite if I don't want to reread it, or if I'm just not itching to reread it or re-listen to it. So yeah, that is how I came up with this list. But feel free to let me know in the comments what your favorite book was of 2022. Is it any of the books I listed in this video? And if you don't have a comment about your favorite book, but you just want to leave something to let me know that you made it this far in the video and or show me some love, you can leave me a Santa emoji. Let's go with that. And as always, ways you can support my channel will always be linked below, as well as all the books mentioned in this video. Did not list the books from my worst books because I just felt bad. But anyway, all of these books will be listed in the description box. And I think that is it for this video, my beautiful people. So until next time, snuggle up in your hideaway with a good book, especially ones like the ones on this list. Unplug as much as possible from social media and the news. Be kind to all kind. And I will see you in the next video, probably in 2023. Bye. Here we are, closing out 2022. I can't believe it. It has been a great reading year. I did not read as many books as I wanted to, but that's neither here nor there. The books I did read were quality. That's because I had a ton of DNFs. So stay tuned for all the books that I DNF'd in 2022. I'm thinking about doing it as a tier ranking, one of my first. I think that'll be fun. And also, I'm going to do a superlatives video for my 2022 books, things that did not make it in this list, but such things like my favorite novella, favorite horror book, things like that. We'll see. So lots of things coming in 2023. I'm pretty sure this will be it for 2022. So I hope the year has been good to you, and I'm wishing you all the best in 2023 and hope we all have a good reading year. And thank you for making it to the end of this video. If you did, you can let me know what you think about the DNFs video. If you want a tier ranking or just a regular list type of thing. Yeah, how you feel about the superlatives video. I think that's it. So bye.